The conflict is we have two completely opposite systems. One driven by the free market that should allow prices to fall, and the system that we live in the matrix, that is forcing prices to rise. And every time you capture more value, every time prices should fall, the mirror image of that is you have to steal more of the productivity gains and transfer them to other people to keep the insolvent system solvent. And the war between those two systems, from the people at the top of the system that's fighting you, fighting the free market, will get worse. It will create wars around the world. It'll try to block Bitcoin around the world. It'll try to do all sorts of things. It'll try to create more misinformation. It will get way worse because the only way it can remain is through coercion and control. The only way it can remain solvent is making you pay through harvesting your time and energy for $400 trillion of debt that's already insolvent. It's going to be a crazy epic battle. Over time, free markets win because they outperform centralized control markets. So the people that are moving onto Bitcoin early are going to win.
Welcome to the Microscopic Podcast presented by GoldRepublic. My name is Alexej, and in this format I invite you to look at the world through different lenses, to see what's hidden in plain sight. We'll dive deep to understand the forces that drive macroeconomics, financial markets, and the emergence of a new monetary system with some money like gold, silver, and digital assets like Bitcoin. We'll also investigate how geopolitics and power games shape the world we live in, but also what can we learn from history to understand the present and prepare for the future. I hope you will get fresh insight and enjoy this conversation. If you do, as always, please give it a like and subscribe, but also leave your actions down below in the comment section and share it to those who need to hear this. But before I start, I'd like you to know that if you open an account at GoldRepublic, you will receive 1 free gram of gold. Just click on the link in the description. Welcome to the podcast, Jeff.
Thanks, Alexej. Great to be here.
The first question I ask to all my guests that come on the podcast, and that question is, what is your most heretical view on the monetary system?
That it's always been designed to steal the productivity that should flow to society in the form of lower prices.
So that's, I think, a good premise on to the next part, which is finding out, obviously, like I've read your book, The Price of Tomorrow, and it's kind of like the whole topic around that. And it's mainly like the thought-provoking statement, or just actually, I would say intellectual exercise as well, to envision a world which we're not used to because we are living this one, which is inflation driven. But before we dive into that, perhaps it would be good to kind of lay the foundation of what are your first principles in terms of kind of describing what the state of today's monetary system actually is. What are its weaknesses? How do we get there? What are the main points or aspects to it?
Well, and I have a hard time going to all of the aspects to it right now. Let's just talk about it as some of them. But I have a hard time spending my time there because it keeps on taking you to, and then what, and then what, and then what. And every time you get to these kind of blocks from our existing monetary system, you realize it's just based on a belief that we cannot essentially write down assets to what they're actually worth. You have to keep them inflated forever, and you have to keep on going on that forever. And why would that look like that? Is today we have $400 trillion of insolvent debt globally. And if you paid back that debt at $1 a second, it would take 12,873,000 years to pay back that debt. So you know that the debt can't be repaid. So how did the debt come into existence in the first place? And how did it get so big? is it exists on the opposite side of a system that the natural state of a free market is deflation.
How come? So that's actually something I try to wrap my head around, based on which mechanisms or assumptions.
So if you just said the natural state of a free market is deflation, so that's obviously a big concept because it challenges every other belief we have, right? Because it doesn't seem like that is the world we live in, and so there's a couple of conditionary words in there, right? Of a free market is a conditionary word to the natural state. But why? Quite simply, is because we use things that give us more value, and entrepreneurs try to create value to get us to use things. Mm-hmm. Quite simply. Right. So in other words, if an entrepreneur created something that gave you less value, you wouldn't use it. That fair? Right. And so that free market of entrepreneurs trying to give you more value, and you being on the other side of that coin, receiving that value or using things that give you more value, is prices fall. And so what ends up happening is and so look at this in all of the examples. You could look at it everywhere, but that's why it's such a big statement. Today we live in a world where we're putting our money or we're trying to save our money in things like Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, because they're outperforming the rest of the market. And they're outperforming the rest of the market and creating monopolies by using artificial intelligence that we're using over and over again in our time, right? To be able to get things for free or almost free. Mm-hmm. And then, but we think out of that relationship, prices should also go up forever. So the conflict is we live in a system where prices are designed to go up forever, and that design of that essentially steals our labor. So it steals the price. It steals from prices falling forever, and transfers to the people on top of that system. And why? Because we're the same person, right? We're not, in one part of our life, we want all prices to go up. We want our house value to go up. We want all of these things because we hold a lot of debt against the house. In one part of our life, we want to get more value. But those two parts are the same part, right? Where they're just two sides of the same coin. And if we're all trying to get more value in our lives, then prices should fall as a result of the entrepreneurial process in a free market. And if you go, and I say this all the time, so forgive the audience that have already heard this, but prices fall to the marginal cost of production, period. Why I say it all the time is it's so important, because if that is true, and your calculator app or something, your calculator today is free because it's a line of code, and then you have to ask what's the marginal cost of production of a line of code? Zero. It's also why this Riverside is free or almost free. There's no way to create more and more money on something that has greater and greater competition from entrepreneurs being able to give the value. They chase that price lower and lower and lower, and there's no walls of margin that you could create to be able to. And so the price keeps falling. And as the price keeps falling, it opens up more and more users because it's so valuable, and it keeps and it keeps falling. So prices over a longer time horizon fall to the marginal cost of production. What's the cost of a line of code created by other lines of code? And you can see where artificial intelligence is taking us. When when we're talking about the digital space and how much productivity. Remember, you wouldn't use artificial intelligence or the tools if it didn't provide you value and more productivity in your life. That productivity comes from what you used to do that took you time, or what an employee used to do that took time in your business. So it has to come at the expense of jobs as prices fall to the marginal cost of production. When you take that to the next level, when that gets merged and all a machine is with artificial intelligence embedded in the machine, is the machine to the robot, its price will fall to the marginal cost of production. And it will do all of the other things, the physical things that we take for granted today, better than humans. So it's not just the digital realm. Looking forward, it's all realms. And so as a natural consequence of that, you have to ask, what will we do better than machines? And not just what will you do better? Because then what will we as a society, will there be more jobs or less jobs? And let's forget the edge cases where some people are going to use the machines to create way more value. It's what I do, right? Way more value. And as a result of that, if you lived in a monetary system that didn't allow the prices to fall, as people were forced to have higher and higher prices, but they didn't have the jobs, what would happen to society? It would break, right? Or they would turn to the same people that are creating monetary policy essentially to pay back insolvent debt by manipulating money. They would turn to those same people and concentrate wealth faster because they were so afraid of what they would do when they lost their job. And so you could say that's what's happening in the world today, and you could describe everything through that process. And that process is because we have two completely opposite systems. One driven by the free market that should allow prices to fall, and the system that we live in that is forcing prices to rise. And every time you capture more value, every time prices should fall, the mirror image of that is you have to steal more of the productivity gains and transfer them to other people to keep the insolvent system solvent.
So there's kind of like a bottleneck in the system, in a way that if it was truly free, then that value would also be attributed to the rightful owner or the rightful beneficiary in that system. But those bottlenecks then would be, in that case, centralized governments, central banks. Which part of the matrix would that be?
So all of them. And again, I've kind of coined a couple of terms in this, but you think about regulation. We have regulation to protect your money from a system designed to steal it. So what would that look like? So, and that's why I say you have to start at first principles. If prices fall to the marginal cost of production, if that means the natural state of any market is the natural state of a free market is deflation, then anything that stops that is not the free market, and it's not. And what would that look like? It would drive it into financial regulation to protect you, to pretend to protect you from a system that stole from you. What else would it look like? It would look like, if you looked at the big companies today, every one of them that's regulated, it protects the monopolies. So look at food systems, look at medical systems, look at the health, look at our planetary systems. They're all turning into giant regulated monopolies, because that's how you protect a monopoly. There is no under the other world, the prices fall to the marginal cost of production. There is no monopoly power. It's impossible to create a monopoly, because prices keep falling and entrepreneurs attack industries that have high margins. Because why, as they would lose their jobs and go to other industries, and prices would fall as a result of that, and society would benefit by more value. The people that are super capable and they see this industry that has big fat margins being protected, what would they do? They would go and attack that and create more value there. So again, the regulation that we live in and the increasing regulation that we live in is a symptom from a control structure that is manipulating money. And it has to get worse. The coercion and control, because we wouldn't choose to live in that system. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't choose to have our money stolen over a long period of time. So the only way that you can actually force people to live in that system is through co-opting first kind of the regulatory process. And then because money is superordinate to laws, the laws doesn't matter if you control money. Who controls money controls the laws, and the laws get changed to support the control of the money. And so over time, you whittle away people's individual rights and freedoms because the institutions themselves get co-opted by the money. And so when we look around at the mere reflection of everything in our life today it seems to be getting worse, it's from the system that has to get worse because money is broken. And there is no solve to that system from that system. So everybody that's in one small dimension of that, worried about regulation, worried about voting for a different person because they think that person's the other person's bad, the good, evil on both sides, how much they're getting played in society today out of this system is just grabbing more of their attention to make the system stronger.
The destructive distraction in a way.
Yeah, because it has to look like that. It has to look, and that's why I try to simplify these topics to say if there's $400 trillion of debt and it's already insolvent, then you're going to, if you're living in the system, no matter what, your wages are going to be garnished at a higher and higher wages, savings, everything else are going to be taken at a higher and higher rate looking forward to pay back something that's already insolvent, unless you hold Bitcoin.
We'll talk about Bitcoin a bit later, but I still want to dig a bit on those first principles and candidly ask those questions that might have been asked before. And there's a great, I think, video of you and George Gammon also kind of exchanging a different point of view. And I think it's good because it kind of gives also like different, covers like different aspects of what you're just saying. And in that kind of system where scarce sources, let's say raw materials or just time in general, or time is also scarce, or bodies are scarce. They're scarce in a way that they are finite. And you describe deflation being a source of abundance. Abundance doesn't necessarily mean infinite, right?
Doesn't mean infinite. It means abundant.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's abundant until it's not anymore. The premise of that, that you're painting, kind of changes, I guess, in terms of, let's say, we need energy.
It doesn't. And this is where, so we already have abundant energy on this planet. We don't have a way to economically grab the abundant energy. So what ends up happening is we centralize energy and we make bad choices on energy policy by centralizing energy and centralizing decisions on energy. What Bitcoin does specifically is it puts an economic free market action to chase abundant energy by Bitcoin mining. That's one of the things that helps keep it decentralized, but it also creates abundant energy, because you cannot be profitable by paying energy prices that a city is paying for Bitcoin. So what it does is it chases energy all around the world, abandoned energy, dirty energy, and it provides an economic rationale for energy abundance. So it's one of the things that moves you to energy abundance rather than trusting a centralized system that can do that. I'll give you an example that I've used again many times, but BC Hydro here in Canada, centralized system in BC, to be able to pay for the Site C dam, essentially said to all the secondary dams held by private dams, they turned off the dams. Why? They turned off, so all of the free energy, green energy for the planet, for this, why did they turn it off? Because if they kept it on, the energy prices went negative and you couldn't pay for the capital cost of the dam. So the centralized energy is making decisions, capital decisions, to be able to protect the energy monopoly and the capital cost of those decisions, because it needs to be centralized, and they're making poor decisions, not about energy, not about abundant energy, about price they need to be able to pay for the system. Similar to our existing financial system with $400 trillion of debt, making decisions, not economically rational decisions in a free market, rational decisions to pay for debt that's already insolvent. Two totally different things.
But in terms of, let's say, raw materials, so that's energy. Now, let's say when we talk about this paradigm shift, or if let's say we're like in this system that you're describing, what about houses? What about art? What about the way we value things?
Let's pick on some of these things, and so you can see a longer arc of history, and you can see what's happening right now. So in 1908. In the US, Sears used to sell like 2,500 square foot, they're like beautiful stately mansions, right? 3,000 square foot. But they used to sell them in an entire lumber, timber package, wall, insulation, windows, plumbing, everything delivered to site. So you still had to create it. Those houses cost $2,500 delivered. Ask yourself this. In the last 120 years, have we had more technology in all of the things in those products? If we had more technology in distribution, should it cost less in all of those things than it did 120 years ago? The answer is quite simple. The labor component and everything else is way less in all of those things because technology is inserted. So why does a $2,500 package like that now cost $800,000? Simply because the money supply has changed by that much. The only reason is because the dollar is worth that much less in those terms today. The only reason, because if it was on a free market, the prices would fall, and so that house price would fall too. And so now carry that forward. So why do people buy so many houses and multiple houses? Is because they're trying to store their economic energy into something that doesn't lose value as fast as the money is losing value. So they create, and so instead of the house being a utility, the house creates a monetary premium because it's a storage of wealth. And then what do a whole bunch of people do? If you're a big hedge fund or something, then you don't buy one house, you buy thousands of houses, because when you do, you can extract that economic energy from people who don't have the houses at a faster rate. And it turns into more of a storage of our value, more of a monetary premium. And as you do that, you lever the system, you create more debt into the system, and you lever the system more and more and more. And all of our actions trying to protect us individually from losing our money in a system designed to steal our money make the system stronger to steal our money. And so what I just described here is how all of our actions also make it stronger, and we think it's other people. And I also described that the free market, that $2,500 Sears house, would be less expensive today in real terms if you allowed the free market to work. So you could see from that you could see from that, not infinitely. So there'd still be a price. There'd still be a price until the robots are doing all the labor, and the artificial intelligence systems are still doing it. At some point, that price gets so low, it's negligible. But still today, there'd still be a price. There'd still be an economic rationale to do that. And entrepreneurs would chase that and try to provide more value. But that price of that home would be way less today, not way more. The only reason it's more is because people are living in the system that they've always lived in, believing that the prices have to go up, and making them go up through their actions, and then allowing more government decentralized control to be able to take more of their money.
But let's say art, for example, or like just a way of attributing value, because you say it would basically price would equal the cost of production. What would be art, or like other things that are not from the realm of actual production?
So let's look at art today in the form of music, right? There's almost abundant music, and you could listen to any music. And then the top musicians, Taylor Swift's making more than any actor or any artist before her. And you can also consolidate kind of power through these systems. But if you look at the long tail of music, what do you pay for music versus what you paid for music 30 years ago? And I suspect you pay a lot less for music, and you get way more abundance. So you can see this happening, right? You can see it happening, and the free market is competitive against that as technology enters into it. So now expand that to art. It's the same concept. If somebody is creating something that is so great against all of the other people that are creating great things, and you think it's more valuable, and a whole bunch of other people think it's more valuable, it will be valuable. But it'll create way more content, and then artificial intelligence is going to add its own content, and all of these things are going to be competing with that too. So your art better stand out at some sort of crazy amount against this competition. Otherwise, it'll fall in price too. But the result of it falling in price, if you lived in a system that all prices were falling at that rate, would mean the real value of your income is going up exponentially. So the fear comes from what you're asking, what you're describing is the fear comes from having your mind in the other world and being scared of prices always going up, versus a system that allows prices of everything to constantly fall. Now, I grant you, and this is what George was talking about, why this is so hard for people to believe, and why it's so hard for George to believe, is it's never existed before. And he's right. And human nature doesn't want it to exist. That's why, if you kind of on the other side, we won't go to Bitcoin right now, but if you just said Bitcoin, that's where most of my work was, to try to disprove my hypothesis. And what I realized is Bitcoin is going to impose this, and it doesn't really care what people think. It could care less. It's just an honest ledger imposing that discipline. So when measured in Bitcoin, all prices are falling exponentially. When measured in fiat, all prices will rise, or most prices will rise.
So would this system be still a capitalistic system?
It is 100% capitalistic system. We don't know what capitalism looks like in the old system because it's always been manipulated. So even the word capitalism has so many different connotations, or socialism. There's so many, it's nonsense. We almost don't have a word to describe what this new system looks like. But it's the free market. It is the free market working, and creative destruction working, and nobody is protected from it. Nobody. But the output of that nobody being protected from it means prices fall for all of society. And you don't have to believe what I'm saying. But if you don't believe what I'm saying, then you're going to be hurt from the existing system stealing your economic energy as Bitcoin reprices everything else. It is 100% a capital, like, or as you would term it, capitalist system. I think how you would term capitalist system. So what people don't like about capitalism, or today, what they don't, there is no capitalist system as you define it in a system with manipulated money, because the capitalists, when they would fail, if the entire world was going to fail because we had counterparty risks and it started unwinding and every bank would fail, the capitalists too would come in and say, save my bank. So it's crony capitalism. It's crony capitalism because we would vote for more things to save our livelihood from that existing system. And that's why the existing system cannot stop what we're talking about. It has to continue to get worse. It has to take more and more of the free market into government and tech companies specifically. And those have to get into a holy alliance against people to be able to drive coercion and control in the existing system. Has to.
I think it also raises the question because capitalism is also defined by ownership by means of production and by the of the profits emerging from that production. Thereby, what type of ownership would allow that type of deflation where you would have such a giant force of, let's admit we're in the system and where innovation and technology is so strong that it decreases the prices or it makes prices fall. What about like the people who own that technology, right? Like it needs to be distributed. It needs to be in a way to the access of the commons, or so then it wouldn't be capitalistic by definition, isn't it?
No, it's the opposite. This is actually the way that the point here is as you're defining capitalism, not crony capitalism today. The free market forces that. What you're actually saying is, I am going to, so if the prices fall to the marginal cost of production and I own the thing that is now free, I probably want to move and own something else, right? Before it gets to free. That's how the free. So how many entrepreneurs do you know, or how many venture finance companies do you know that are investing in calculator apps? Right. You want to move because the free market drives the price, and then there's no money left in that thing. So you chase somewhere where you can make a return. That is capitalism, and that is creative destruction that is allowed. And if the entrepreneur or the capital isn't in the wave that's driving that price, driving that abundance forward, they get killed. Because their thing doesn't compete anymore in the market. That is capitalism. It's messy because there is no one to come and save you when you fail. Today's system is crony capitalism because if you're big enough, if you're right now, there's rumors it's actually SoftBank who's failing, and and all of the discount windows and everything else, even tied to potentially, that's why Warren Buffett, that might be his investment to be able, that he can't say because it's so tied into the system. But there's so much counterparty risk within the system that you have to make up new rules constantly to protect the money from being imploded, and the money being imploded is the same people that you're talking about. So what that means is the opposite of what we're saying is, if you get big enough to be systematically important in the existing system, you'll be saved by socializing the losses. That is not capitalism. It's the opposite. If we lived in capitalism, if we lived in a free market today, the $400 trillion of insolvent debt would be wiped out. It would all fail, everything. And the people with the most money on top of that and the most assets on top of that would similarly all fail completely. It's super important because you're measuring capitalism from a system that can't allow it. that won't allow it. So Bitcoin, and that's why it doesn't care with our reference points of what it is. It's an honest ledger imposing the free market discipline, imposing, I think, what you mean by capitalism, or the true meaning of definition, without any, this time it's okay to cheat. It doesn't care. It's going to impose those rules, and if you cheat on it, eventually, if you leverage it, then eventually you're going to get liquidated. And that's what happens to FTX. That's what happens to a whole bunch of companies inside that system that try to play the same games on a system that won't allow them.
Wouldn't that imply like a new way of just economic theories to basically think around that? Would there be such a new model, or what would this new paradigm shift then imply in terms of economic theory?
So this is actually the one thing that I find so fascinating about kind of what you just asked me. And I honestly, I find it so perplexing. When you realize that prices fall to the marginal cost of production and the free market, the natural state, is deflationary, then you realize all of the economic theories and all of the things you are taught are abstractions to hide what I just said. Nothing else. It's the most simple theory. It's because it just is true, right? It's either not true or it is true, right? And if it's true, and the only reason you don't see it is because of a ledger that allows dishonesty, then every theory on top of that is hiding that fact. It's all nonsense. It's all complete nonsense. So think about the cost to society of all the nonsense, of all the people telling you that the only reason you'll spend your money is if we make sure you lose money in real terms faster. The only reason you spend money, the only reason you trade with people all over the world, you wouldn't trade, you wouldn't buy things unless you were forced to because your money was losing value. All of these nonsensical theories are designed from the other system to be able to continue that theft. It's really simple. It's so simple. People make it complicated by constantly trying to describe something that isn't complicated at all.
It makes my question sound very stupid then. But coming back now to Bitcoin, because I want to try to use the same then thinking for Bitcoin, and looking at it then from a energy perspective. So the cost of energy for Bitcoin, if that is so low, then what would then be the security of the network?
Right. So most of the conversations, by the way, like this, come from trying to bring baggage from the existing system you live in to a new system that doesn't care about the baggage. So that question, let's just run through that thought experiment, and let's say energy prices keep on going lower and lower and lower, but all prices relative to those energy prices are also going lower and lower and lower. Mm-hmm. Then it means Bitcoin, even in that term, could fall in price, but relative to all other prices, be way higher. And that's what happens. All prices fall forever. And Bitcoin falls too in fiat term, or maybe not in fiat terms, because fiat's but in that system, in the end, it's just relatively way more expensive than the other things that it's pricing.
What would then the reasoning be, like, in terms of comparing it to the value of everything else?
Because it's a free market that's chasing lower cost energy. Energy is the input into everything else. Energy is the input into mining. Energy is the first. Energy is the world. Mm-hmm. So as energy prices fall in Bitcoin terms, all prices fall in Bitcoin terms, and just not as and Bitcoin doesn't fall as fast as all of the other things driven by energy and everything from it. So we're looking a long way out, and these are hard concepts. So you could say the same thing applies to what will happen if a whole bunch of Bitcoin miners on the next halving get liquidated because they can't pay for their energy. They're paying 4 cents a kilowatt hour, and they could only make money at 2 cents. All the ones at 4 cents or with old equipment get liquidated in favor of, and then the hashing algorithm changes the 10-minute hashing algorithm, just keeps every 10-minute window, same thing, doesn't matter. Everyone just free market works. And then all the more competitive Bitcoin miners at 2 cents energy at newer machines replace that, and they become more competitive. Then 1.5 cents as they're chasing energy abundance. And then some of those coin miners will say, "Oh, just a second, I'm going to heat my house with this to be able to tie that into cheaper energy and use the heat instead of an electric baseboard where I'm not making money from my heat." And so that energy kind of synergistic thing around Bitcoin, which is driving this, is a free market chasing abundant energy. The output of that free market driving abundant energy is lower price.
And from an energy perspective, do you think that the grid that we have today, or the way things are set up, would be able to support such kind of a system?
So systems like this that are bottom up, driven on a network effect that is chasing the free market, it doesn't care what the existing centralized system thinks.
Mm-hmm.
So think about how these systems become centralized too. So a big city requires centralized energy for peak energy, right? And because we didn't have a different way of doing this, there was no economic rationale to decentralize energy around something like this. We have these big centrally provided energy providers that constantly make worse and worse decisions around energy for peak energy. But now you have something decentralizing that can make better decisions, make better economic decisions in a free market. And they move those economic decisions that over time, the centralized actor, doesn't matter what they do. More and more people move to where the value is. And I would say this is happening at such a high level that I don't think, so we used to aggregate in cities and still do, because the bigger the city, the more economic value in the city, and the less than further and away cities. So we moved there and we centralized farming systems, we centralized energy systems to support the big cities, and some of the cost of that centralization imposed other hidden problems and risks to society. Well, today, as the world moves forward, you can tie into Starlink. You could have an off-grid energy system on your. You could be on grid while you're off-grid anywhere in the world. And you can localize your food system, and so now you can be tied into a global connected system on the internet and provide value to anybody in the world remotely without being tied to the centralized system. And that's going to expand faster and faster and faster as more people take advantage of what that's looking at. And as they take advantage of that, as a free market takes advantage of it, they will drive it faster.
So I think you also mentioned this in your book. You said there's like moving forces that are, deflation and this system is basically the enemy. So everything you say goes against the current of the interest. It's kind of like in the Matrix where you're against those agents, and the agents start like being very hostile towards you because you're against the system. It would require certain steps or events or things to happen. And obviously, I guess you cannot foresee the future, but at least maybe have some scenarios where this would perhaps be possible, or a way of unfolding towards that type of a system?
It is unfolding. It might be unfolding. It is unfolding. Both systems are competing for your attention today. In one system, prices are falling. In Bitcoin, prices are falling. And as long as it stays decentralized and secure, that will happen forever. In one system, prices are rising, and more of your individual rights and freedoms are being taken from you. Mm-hmm. And the war between those two systems, from the people at the top of the system that's fighting the free market, will get worse. And it will create wars around the world. It will create, it'll try to block Bitcoin around the world. It'll try to do all sorts of things. It'll try to create more misinformation. It will get way worse, because the only way it can remain is through coercion and control. The only way it can remain solvent is making you pay through harvesting your time and energy for $400 trillion of debt that's already insolvent. Mm-hmm. It will do everything it can to lock you in, to keep control at the top. Elizabeth Warren and such, to be able to change laws, to be able to remove your individual rights and freedoms. It will do that. And most people will stay there, thinking I'm going to fight Elizabeth Warren with somebody else who is going to take away my individual rights and freedoms from the same system. Most people will stay there. This is where I agree with George. But you don't have to. You don't have to wait for BlackRock. You don't have to wait for anybody. You can just move your time to the new system. And the more of your time you move to the new system, the faster the new system in parallel moves. So you could stop spending your energy against the system that's trying to steal your energy, and start spending your energy inside the system that's not. But that'll be a choice every single person makes. And it's going to be a crazy epic battle, because the system is wanting you slow down at a car crash to see what happened. Same reason why the algorithms and they know everything about you, and they can and some of the algorithm can change your mind over time slowly to be able to keep you in the system. That's what you're dealing with. And as AI gets more advanced, that will happen at a greater and greater rate. But that's almost paralyzing to think, right? That we don't have any control. Mm-hmm. Every single person has agency, whether they know it or not. They have agency to change the world, to just move into a world on an honest ledger and spend more time there. When they do, they will see that also expands. And so over time, free markets win because they outperform centralized controlled markets. And so the existing system we are in is a centrally controlled system that's getting worse and worse. And US will not beat China by being more centrally controlled than China. The free market will win. And again, that's what Bitcoin imposes. It imposes the free market. So the people that are moving onto Bitcoin early are going to win.
In terms of technology, because you just mentioned AI, if AI gives us so much of like this new utility and increased productivity, I also try to think of the way we already use smartphones, or just the internet. And if you just look at the way most people use it, with sharing memes, or just looking at very not much value adding videos, and versus all the knowledge that history, or that the human history has been able to produce, and the access we have to it, I have the impression we heavily underutilize that part of technology. And in terms of AI, I feel like if we apply the same logic towards then the way we would leverage AI, then there's just too much of a disparity in terms of the way we utilize the technology. Well, what's your take on that?
So if you gave a whole bunch of people a bunch of money that was created from nothing, and they could sit at their home every day and do nothing, Would you expect them to watch videos all day and play with memes on the computer? Of course you would, right? So again, from the existing system, you could see exactly what would happen to people over that, and you could essentially mind control them through that, and they would say, when do I get my next paycheck? When do I get this? And I go to government to get my next paycheck. You wouldn't have a free market because you could mind control everybody through that. And a whole bunch of people would live in that system and in the matrix and waiting for their next drip. That's that. When I say farming you, that's what I'm getting at. In a system that operated differently, the free market would reign. And people would go and do things that provided them value. And as technology allowed them to do more things that provided them value or created more value they had an idea that created more value for society. If their idea was right, they would accrue more benefits than the person who didn't. But even the person who didn't, prices would still fall for that person too. Just they wouldn't accrue as much value as the person that was delivering value. So that's what's going to happen. The people that are going to create value for other people are going to accrue more Bitcoin in doing so. In fact, that is what we're doing at Ego Death. We believe that we are going to have 10 to 1,000x returns on top of Bitcoin by investing, but not at a fiat rate over Bitcoin's rate, by investing in the best entrepreneurs that are creating value on top of it, because they're getting paid in Bitcoin. They're creating, and so they're creating valuable companies on top of essentially what is the new peer-to-peer internet by delivering value. And if they're delivering value, and yes, they will all face competition from other people wanting to create more value. But the ones that are created, and that means they're constantly going to have to innovate. But that's what our fund in Ego Death is doing. That's the entire thesis of our fund. And it's staggering to be able to see what's happening, how fast things are growing, how exciting this area is. I just can't believe more people can't see it.
Well, it is, it's a whole new world and it's a whole type of thinking. So, as we speak, I'm trying to unwind the things that I know of and try to make room for what you say. And it also, I'm curious, when did that click for you? What was the sequence of the journey that made you basically see that world in this way?
So I was obviously I've lived most of my life in technology companies. I was in kind of the wave to the internet, and early because I understood the same things that are happening in Bitcoin that were happening on the internet. I knew what that would do. And then through that process, for 10 years before I wrote my book, I couldn't resolve the conflict in my head that if this technology I'm using to deliver this value for people is this powerful, why aren't prices, and we use this type of technology everywhere, that's what the free market does, and people are using it more and more and more, why aren't prices falling? And so that rattled around in my brain for a long, long time. And I kept on, so I went down a rabbit hole on the existing financial system, why it was constructed, how it was constructed, what it would do, and why it would get worse and worse and worse over time. That's why I wrote my book, because I didn't want my kids growing up in the society that looked like that. So it was a warning to what to do. And even on the end of my book, I only put Bitcoin in as a paragraph, because at that time, I had owned Bitcoin and some Bitcoin, but I thought at that time I had signed a 5% probability that it would fail at some point, and so I tried to disprove everything I'm saying. Right, so this took a long time. It's kind of because you have to unwind a whole bunch of your own biases, and you have to rebuild them at first principles. So then I came up with some first principles on, is this true? Yes, no. Right. Is it provable? Yes, no. Is it true? First principle? Why? And once you get to the sand on that, then you start to rewire your world in something that, if that's true, And if Bitcoin stays decentralized and secure, then it's pricing that truth no matter what. It's imposing that discipline no matter what. So then I spent a whole bunch of time on Bitcoin saying, is it the only thing is it a discovery that is the only thing that could be decentralized and secure, and could it be repeated? And what would be the chances of failure there? And through the course of that work, I kept on decreasing my probabilities of failure, and increasing my belief in it was the only thing. It couldn't be. All attacks made it stronger. And we could go into every one of the attacks, why it would make it stronger, but all of the attacks made it stronger, and it was just imposing that discipline on the world. And so when you think about that process, and then you get there, then you realize, most people just can't measure risk properly. So they might have a 1% allocation to Bitcoin and 99% in the system that's failing because they're bad risk managers. And once you understand kind of that those probabilities, then you invert more of your time in the system that actually has way less risk, way more of your time and energy. And as an output of that, what's happened, what's kind of my time, my energy, where I spend it with entrepreneurs, what I get to see happening from doing that work. It's amazing to me how much opportunity there is here. And it's amazing other people haven't done the work to understand it. Amazing.
What are the 5% that you've allocated, and what were the attacks you're referring to? One by one, I'm actually curious.
So we won't have time because to be able to go into them, but let's go into a couple. Let's go into probably, let's say a state attack. Let's say the U.S. tries to ban Bitcoin, right? So, and then U.S. and then Europe does as well, and a couple other countries do as well. And so maybe let's do this in a couple of ways. Let's say all countries do, and then certain countries do, because those are different attack vectors. So let's say all countries do. Now, what are the chances right now in the world we live in that all countries agreeing to ban Bitcoin, to be able to all cooperate on a system of theft, right? And everybody trying to get who gets to steal more, and all countries trying to cooperate on that. So I see it's very highly unlikely that all countries band together in their current environment to try to stop a system, to try to stop an honest ledger. Let's go through if they did. If they did, and Bitcoin stayed decentralized and secure, so you could argue that it would impose, maybe it couldn't, but the free market would still chase abundant energy. The free market would still, every time capital controls come in, like something like this, a market moves underground and moves faster. So every country that experiences capital controls or hyperinflation, you have an underground economy that moves faster. This underground economy on Bitcoin would move at light speed because it's so decentralized and secure that it would actually, and if you understood what was building on top of it, that accelerates that, it would effectively, those countries, all those countries that said it, would effectively be saying, we are going to control you with artificial intelligence and robotics forever. You're a slave. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do you think society would do? Would this grow faster or slower? And I suspect it would grow faster. The more fear, the more you impose that, and the more people that know all it is an honest ledger, right? It's just an honest ledger against a dishonest ledger. And the more people, your show is doing this for people, I suspect right now, right? This conversation is, wait, I do live in the dishonest ledger. And most of my time is trying to create enough money in the dishonest ledger that I have more than somebody else. What would that look like? And now we have an honest ledger. So what would the dishonest ledger say about the honest ledger? And you could see that just the free market of that would create this conflict in more and more people's mind, that more people would race on to the honest ledger. So I think it would actually accelerate it. So now let's go into a state attack by like what Warren's trying to do by removing individual rights and freedoms and saying, Patriot Act, we need to protect you from people using bad money, right? Using this to fund wars, even though it's not true. It would have to, again, more and more misinformation to control you. And that misinformation, in say the States, would create a whole bunch of other people who would question that. It would create an opportunity for politicians based on the Constitution and other to say, wait, what does this look like? And more people would start to understand what we're talking about, and it would drive more adoption. And so could that adoption go underground for a while in those cases? Yes. Could it be risky to talk about trade? Yes. But again, in all of these markets, the free market eventually wins anyways. Because people won't trade with people they don't trust. Mm-hmm. And you over and over. And so the existing dishonest ledger is a system screaming at you to get out of it. While most people, by the very question saying, I'm scared of Bitcoin because governments will shut it down, are essentially inside their jail cell that's locked, or that has an open door, saying, lock me in, quickly lock me in. Right? When they could just walk out. That's what they're doing with that fear. So that would be, I would say, the biggest fear that people that know what it is, that stay stuck. That's what they do. Then there's a whole bunch of people that effectively, probably the bigger group of people, that are trading assets within the financial system that we live in, thinking that they're outrunning the debasement. Gold would fit in that, right? And I know a bunch of your audience would look at gold, and I'm not saying gold couldn't work. There's actually a chance that you could revalue gold right up really fast and remove the debt by doing so, but it doesn't change the underlying structure. The technology is deflationary. So in that environment, if that happened, and to make that happen, China, Germany, Russia would all have to agree on doing that. And then all of the countries that got their pockets picked that didn't have as much gold would have to agree to that. So even in that type of an environment, which could happen, and gold went from 3,000 to 20,000 in an instant, which could happen, Bitcoin would go up higher. And Bitcoin would resolve the longer term prices fall to the marginal cost of production. Well, gold wouldn't. It would just be centralized again, because you couldn't accurately know who was cheating it, what the ledger was look like, and who was centralizing it, who was actually cheating it, who had paper gold. You couldn't actually know between those countries that won't trust each other. So what most people, going back to that, most people are trading assets, including gold, that are a function of the existing system, thinking that they're going to outrun monetary debasement or the taxes that come later to be able to impose, to be able to transfer wealth from some people to other people from within a system that is making that system stronger over them. And Bitcoin is the only thing without counterparty risk to that system.
Even you don't see, like, for example, like, I mean, again, I know already like what you're going to say about that, but like the financialization of Bitcoin, or the Bitcoinization of finance, that's the question, right?
BlackRock just gets their ETF approved. Where is the money that is in BlackRock today? So the money that's in BlackRock today is in your pension plan, my pension plan, a whole bunch of things, trusting BlackRock to get a higher return than you could get because they think BlackRock has inside information to how the financial system works. So they're playing inside ball while you're not allowed to play inside ball. And that's why your money resides there. And that's why they make a higher return, and other people money resides there because of the inside ball. Right? So now BlackRock drives an ETF, and you pay a 1% fee. So in 10 years, you make 56% less on your Bitcoin by paying BlackRock to be able to hold a paper instrument of your Bitcoin, where you could just hold it yourself and make the entire return. What is likely to happen? What's likely to happen is the first wave is BlackRock, a bunch of people go and do that. And then a bunch of people go, why am I paying a fee for somebody else to do this? And they'll self-custody. And today, right now, I think you're 82% or something like that in long-term holders and self-custody. Or maybe it's not quite that high, but more and more self-custody. And as more and more people understand self-custody, and they don't need the bank, in fact, they're losing their own revenue to that same system, the system changes. So what ends up happening, and why this is so hard, Alexej, for people to understand, is they think these systems, one system will always look this way and one system will always look this way. But the imposition of a new system that changes the incentives and a new economic reality change the existing system that takes the control today. Mm-hmm. And will that existing system, will BlackRock and so, will they try? Just because if you could control money, you could control everything. You get to steal productivity from everybody else. Will they try? Maybe. But as long as, and why I say if it says decentralized and secure, that good luck, it imposes this. If they try and it says decentralized and secure, and they've leveraged Bitcoin, then they'll look a lot like FTX.
We're almost running out of precious time, which is scarce in your case. There's no deflation here. I want to conclude, if you allow me, with one last question.
Sure.
So you are obviously familiar with Buckminster Fuller, and you might have heard that quote before, but it kind of I think that's the whole conversation we're having right now is goes by follow. You never change things by fighting the existing reality to change something, but you build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And that's kind of like what I retained from all of we've talked about. But the only thing, and you say it yourself in the book towards the end, I think it's page 205 or something, that in order for all those things that you talk about to be happening, everyone needs to agree on those new rules. But if you look at just human beings and the nature of human beings and the way we disagree on so many things everywhere, like there's not maybe one thing that you can agree on this planet. Do you think that such a system that pardon me, but sounds like a bit of a utopia in a way. Like it's too good to be true.
I don't think it's a utopia. I think this is even on the way there. I don't think we will always want more. We will always try to. Human nature won't change in that. All it will do is allow the free market to work in providing all of us more, rather than a few of us. That's what and the free market will impose that. So we don't actually all have to agree on it. It doesn't care. That's why I said it doesn't care what we think about it. It could care less. It could care less that I'm on this podcast right now. How many? It's had 7 10-minute windows to the time we've been talking. Nobody cared, right? It just kept on going. It's just that honest ledger that's imposing this this belief. So not this belief. It's imposing discipline of a free market. The only thing you should care is it doing that? And then I might want to join that new system and move more of my time out of the existing system.
Clear. On that note, Well, thanks a lot, Jeff. It's been a real like a brain exercise, and I think I'll re-listen to this conversation a couple of more times to be able to follow up on all the things that we talked about for next time we see each other. Hopefully at Bitcoin Atlantis in Madeira.
Yeah, look forward to see you there.
yeah, always better as well. I think interviewing online is great. Technology enables that, but there's nothing better than the technology of reality, seeing each other face to face.
Agreed.
So really, I'm grateful for your time. Thanks a lot, and I hope I'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching. If you liked this episode, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe. Leave your actions down below in the comment section. And if you want to watch more videos, feel free to check the most recent video, but also any other video that we've had published on the channel before. See you next time.